Good evening, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. My name is Janet Dickerson. I'm the Senior Communications Consultant for the Campaign for Black Male Achievement, and we are very happy to have you joining us today as we embark on a very important and urgent conversation in honor of National Suicide Prevention Week. It's also National Suicide Prevention Month, and so throughout the month, we're really going to be championing this issue. And so I want to thank you again for taking the time, especially on a Wednesday evening, to be with us. Now, for those for whom this is the first time you've ever joined a CBMA event or just now hearing about CBMA, the Campaign for Black Male Achievement is a national membership-based organization that is committed to improving life outcomes and opportunities for Black men and boys. And we're actually embarking on our 10th year. We launched in 2008, originally as an initiative of the Society Foundations, and in 2015, actually on MLK Day of 2015, we officially launched into an independent entity. And since then, our network has grown, our reach has grown, but our mission has remained the same, which is to build beloved communities for Black men and boys. And that's why this conversation is so critical, because depression and suicide is a topic that is often seen as taboo in our communities, particularly as it relates to Black men and boys. I have been heartened to see as of late that more and more people in our community are starting to talk about it, especially the younger generations, the hip hop generation. They're starting to shatter their silence and really bring this issue to the forefront. And so we as CBMA felt that it was critically important to help create a safe space to have these conversations, and especially to lift up voices such as those that are on today's Hangout, who have personal journeys, personal experience with these issues, who also work every day to help destigmatize depression and suicidal thoughts for Black men and boys, Black women and girls, Black communities as a whole. And so I want to start off by thanking our speakers, who we will introduce shortly. And the first person I want to introduce is Dr. Phyllis Hubbard, who is the director of CBMA's Health and Healing Strategies Initiative, which is really our effort to empower and foster health and wellness for leaders that are in the field. Because we know that when you are strong, healthy, and powerful, that trickles down into your work, and it touches the lives that you're working with every day. And so we want to make sure that you have the tools and resources you need to be strong and healthy and live fully well lives. And so part of Dr. Hubbard's mission is to be out there in the field, but also through content creation, because we can't be everywhere at once, but we can create content that speaks to these issues and promotes healthy healing. And that's why we're really excited that tomorrow we're going to be launching a brand new multimedia series called Journey to Radiance. So it's going to include podcasts, it's going to include blogs, and it's going to include webisodes. And each episode is going to follow an individual who is going through their own journey or has gone through their own journey to health and healing, and sort of what the challenges were on the way, what lessons they learned, and just really provide a way to share best practices. And since you are spending your time with us this evening, which again, we're very thankful for, we're gonna be offering a special preview for you in advance of tomorrow's official launch. So if you are not currently a part of the CBMA network, but you want to be, we definitely welcome you to join us, and you can sign up through our website at www.blackmaleachievement.org. And so without further ado, I just want to allow Dr. Hubbard the opportunity to just welcome you all, say a few words, and then we will continue on with our program.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I am super excited to galvanize some really amazing people to talk about this issue. It is so important. I know oftentimes when I do workshops, people will pull me off to the side and say, I really want to talk about this issue. And it's because I've somehow managed to crack open something to make them feel safe. And so we hope that this is a safe space for you to begin to explore. We all go through challenges. And I think it's important for us to know that when those challenges hit, we have a strategy to help us move through them. So I'm really excited that we are going to continue to bring this issue to light, as well as offering strategies for transcending and transforming. So thank you for having me.
Thank you, Phyllis. And so without further delay, I am honored to introduce our first speaker, Richard Taylor. I've had the privilege of seeing Richard speak in person, and he's truly inspirational because of his ingenuity, because of his honesty and transparency in terms of his own journey to wellness. Richard is an author. He's a motivational speaker. He is a consultant, and specifically he focuses on empowering people of all ages and helping them to overcome issues of depression, suicide, and low self-esteem. And his debut book, Unashamed, The Process of Reconstruction, was a great success and an Amazon's bestseller. So definitely encourage you to check that out. But we are very happy to have you here with us, Richard, and invite you to take the stage and share your own personal testimony of how you were able to cope with the issues of depression and suicide and low self-esteem.
Thank you, Janet. So, God, I don't even know where to start. I mean, for me, I think a lot of the mental health issues came along around sixth grade just from a mass amount of bullying. And I went home hating myself one day because of something I couldn't control, which was my weight at the time. As a kid, I didn't realize I would go through this like little short, chubby stage, and I got beat up in the bathroom one day because of that. And so I went home thinking that maybe I could just, change my image by cutting fat off of my body. But what I didn't realize was that that would evolve into, self-mutilation, which then over the next few years just turned into full-out suicides. And then even that part evolved as well. And I didn't know that I was going through depression at the time. I kind of just felt like, I was sad. And this is how I level out my mental and emotional pain by, inflicting physical pain. And it wasn't until I got to college with my final suicide attempt in 2008 when I took a blade down my wrist and ended up in the hospital. And so with that being the case, I had to go see the school psychologist in order to stay in college. And it was during that time where I really started to kind of unpack a lot of things. So in my third book, Love Between My Scars, I talk a lot about that and just how there were several things that really took place that caused me to feel like I couldn't open up. So Janet, you did a great job talking about how it's taboo. And it's been taboo for so long. And so for me, I was always told that it was a white people's problem. I was told just pray about it from, church. And then, as far as, family was concerned, it was like, Black people don't deal with that. And if you are a Black person that deals with that, you're weak. And that actually came from my father. So with that being the case, I never wanted to let my dad down. And so I couldn't show myself as being weak. And so with that in mind, I literally I held on to all of these things for so long. And once I had that final attempt, I really had to get to a place of coming to the end of myself and understanding exactly what I had gotten into. And so for me, it wasn't just depression, it was anxiety, it was fear. And it wasn't just the thought of suicides. It was like it became somewhat of a hobby to me, like how can I try and take myself out today? And so with that being the case, just really unpacking and having to address why I was in the situations that I was in, what led me into it. And being in this space now, like you said, just with the work that I'm doing now, helping individuals on this side, I think is very important because so many people, they walk around in silence. They feel like they're alone. And I feel like closed mouths can't get fed, but closed mouths can't do feeding either. So it's our job for those of us who have been able to overcome to be able to step up in that space and to help. And I mean, that's just a little bit of, my story. But with the depression came 170-pound weight gain, came me failing in college with a 1.4 GPA. It also came with me being in an abusive relationship where I was the victim for a year and a half, and openly accepting all of these things, thinking that this is what my life was going to be forever. So.
I remember meeting you when you were at a much heavier weight. That's kind of when we came into to get to know each other, because I
Yes,
remember you sent me
yeah.
a before and after picture, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm so
Yeah.
excited, so proud of you. So for
Thank
the people that are out there listening, what strategies did you use that helped you get from where you are or where you were to where you are now?
Well, I think first and foremost, just kind of breaking the stigmas. Like, so because of the whole talk of who was labeled as who could and couldn't deal with depression and suicide, having to break those barriers, understanding that this is a human thing, right? Like black, white, Asian, it doesn't matter. If you bleed and you are a human, you are imperfect, which means that you are susceptible at a given moment, depending on your situation. And so having to really, break that down first, combating that lie. And then too, I really had to go back and really just, retract a lot of negative things that I spoke over myself, whether it was me saying it or whether it was words from people, a lot of the hurtful, traumatic situations that took place in my life, and being able to understand that I'm not the sum of my past mistakes, which for so long I thought that I was. And so with that being the case, like when I say unpack, I mean, there were literally certain things that I had to do, revisiting old things, having conversations, being able to forgive other people. And one of the things I found out in that time and space too was that the forgiveness for them really wasn't for them. It was more so for me, because I found out that I was holding on to so much resentment amongst myself because I allowed this to happen, but I didn't realize that so many of these things were out of my control, right? Being bullied, being ridiculed, having people talk about you. Even after my suicide attempt, I was in the gospel choir, right? And so, like, I mean, the church folk came after me, and not having that love, and that was a big part. Just getting to a space of learning to love myself, being comfortable with me, and no matter what state I'm in, and understanding that there is so much more to me than all of the negativity that has taken place, and having to take the time to discover that, right? I was so consumed for so long on wanting to die, and I didn't realize that I had never really taken the time to learn how to live. And so with that being the case, it was one of those things where I had to take a step back and understand that I hadn't been living life. I was just merely existing. And with that being the case, I had to understand what it was to love Richard and to live life as Richard.
Right, great. Well, we have just about a minute. So a lot of pressure for you to answer this question, but I'd like for you to just really briefly, if you could say to everyone, what does getting over the hump mean to you? And if there's people out there that are in a place that's so dark they can't see their way out, what would you offer to them as a strategy?
So getting over the hump, and I think the strategy kind of both go hand in hand. So getting over the hump started off as like a series, but then it evolved into more than just content. It became a way of life, right? Like being able to understand that sometimes you're going to have to claw into the ground. Sometimes you're going to have to fight to get up. I mean, or to get to where you need to be. But getting over the hump was literally not allowing whatever it was that was taking place in my life to predicate how I decided to move and function, right? I can't allow this negativity to cause me to become stagnant or to give up altogether. Realizing that even though this is happening right now, while I can't control the situation, I can control myself. And so with that being the case, I think that's what I would give to the people is like, take this time right now, even though you can't control the things that are happening around you. What investments do you make into you so that one, you can weather the storm, but two, also be able to build character that's going to help you as you move forward, right? We've got to start being proactive rather than reactive. And a lot of that comes through being able to properly invest into our mental and emotional health during the storm. And it will help us grow, one, and then also help us as we start to, come across, greater feats as we move on in life.
Wow, thank you so much. That's amazing, and almost in a minute. So I'm very proud of you.
That's right.
Oh my goodness. Alrighty. So I think we'll move on to Brett. Janet, you want to?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again, Richard, because I think you know, it's so important. We can't undervalue how important it is that we just hear stories like yours, and that we have people like you who are championing this and saying, you know, it's okay to shatter the silence. We've been silent for a long time about a lot of things in our community, and it's slowly killing us inside.
Absolutely.
And we need to shift the tide. And so, going into the next part of our conversation, I want to welcome Brett Scudder, who is the president and founder of Scudder Intervention Services Foundation Incorporated, and he is also joining us on behalf of the Suicide Institute and New York Suicide Council. And I think, thank you, Brett, for joining, because I think, in addition to hearing the personal stories, people need to know that there are systems of support out there, that there are resources, that they're not alone, that there are places that they can call for help. And so I want to, you know, turn the floor to you to talk about the work that you're doing, and how that's directly impacting lives and empowering people to shatter their silence and really come out of the shadows of their illness. Brett, I think you might be. Mm-hmm. Brett, your mic is your mic turned on?
It is on.
Oh, there you go. Okay, perfect.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Oh,
we can't hear him.
Out again. Sorry, Brett.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay.
There we go.
So thank you for the opportunity, and thank you for raising this topic and allowing me to be here to share and to talk about this. So there are a lot of services and resources out here for people. And I think one of the biggest changes that are happening across the industry right now is the lived experiences coming into the forefront of a lot of the support systems for suicide prevention. And what that means is you have people who have attempted suicide or lost a loved one to suicide who are now stepping up to be peer support specialists, or people who are working in organizations to be the front line of support for people who have lost a loved one or are thinking of suicide. And that's a significant change in the industry, because one of the biggest problems that the mental health industry faces is the fact that you have a specialized group of people who are always the ones who are thought of to provide services and support for suicide. And the big change that we're seeing is that more people are now comfortable with talking with someone who has lived the experience or has gone through the experience. So that experience itself is now allowing people to connect on a humane level and a human level with someone that they feel like, oh my God, you understand how I'm feeling because you've lived that experience. And so we're seeing a growth in peers stepping into the forefront. And that has created a lot more people to come forward to seek help. You know, Richard talked about a lot of the things in terms of the stigmas and the fears that are out there. But when you look at the Black community, and especially Black males, you know, many of us are out here struggling with emotions, and those emotions are not something we were taught as children how to handle those emotions. And so now here we are growing up in a society that's very insensitive, a very emotionless society, and crying or tears are seen as a sign of weakness. But how many people truly do know where those tears are coming from and how much pain is associated with those tears? And those are some of the ways in which the dynamic is changing for suicide prevention, where the conversation is now coming from a place of pain and a place of lived experience, and people are gravitating towards that. And they're enjoying that comfort, knowing that the person who they're engaging with is someone who can actually say, I have been through, or I have been there on some level. So I have some idea of what you're going through. Together, we can work through this for us to get you the help and to get you to a better place that you need to be. And that's part of the biggest change that we're seeing in the industry. Is a welcoming change, because we need more people who are willing to speak up, especially Black males. And that's one of the reasons why I have so many clients. I have a lot of clients because I'm very open and verbal about my experiences with addiction, abuse, suicide, and trauma. And a lot of people are still amazed at the fact that I say I'm comfortable with my piece of emotional pain. I'm comfortable with suicide. And it still shocks a lot of people to hear me say that. But I have to say that because we have to normalize the conversation. We have to get it to a point where a person should be able to say, I feel like killing myself today, and people not look at them as if they're, something is wrong with them or they have a disease. The other thing is we need to change the dialogue from as soon as someone talks about emotional pain, the first question comes is, what were you diagnosed with?
Mm-hmm.
Not everyone who thinks about suicide or attempts suicide has a mental illness. And that's one of the big things that we really need to get past. And the conversation is changing for a lot of people to realize that life is just hard for some people. Basic life is hard for some people. 85% of the cases that I work with suicide are people who had a broken heart from an intimate relationship. That's not a mental illness. That's just love. And that's just life experiences. But not everybody can deal with a broken heart.
Well, we aren't, like you said, we aren't given the skills.
Take a look at what I found on the web.
So I think that that's really important for us to understand that we have to learn that. So can you share just a little bit of your personal story? Like, how did you overcome suicidal thoughts and depression? Was there a specific strategy you used, or what was the trigger that helped you shift?
I'm going to be honest. This is not something that I have truly fully overcome. I think that I'm at that place where I've become comfortable with my suicide ideation. I moved from pain to peace. I'm at peace with the fact that I live in a society that has no support or resources for males, that males are subjected to a lot of things that a lot of people don't see, especially males of color, Black men. From the minute you open your eyes in the morning, you are already dealing with so much of the stressors of society. And many of us out here don't have a support system or even a partner, an intimate partner who understands the emotional struggles of a Black male. So you can imagine that a Black male being out here, I can truly say that I'm at peace with my pain. I still have my suicide ideations. I still have those days when I feel like, you know what, this is it. I don't want to go on anymore. But what I have done is I have allowed myself to live in the social construct, but not be controlled by the social construct. So I'm not afraid to talk about my feelings or my emotions or expressing them. And that's how I overcame a lot of the fear that I had when being around people. Like now people see me, they call me the suicide man. They say, here comes the suicide man, because I've normalized the conversation in such a way they know I'm comfortable, and I make it a very nice, friendly conversation that we can talk about wanting to die.
Yes.
Many people are afraid of dying, but there are many people who are afraid of living.
Right.
And so until we start having that conversation any and everywhere that we go, a lot of us are lying to ourselves by saying, oh, I'm not depressed or I'm not having those thoughts of suicide. We're just afraid of how people will react when we say that.
Right, right.
So I'm in a place of peace when it comes to my ideations, and knowing that the reality is, as a Black man living in this country, so much is stacked up against me. And no one understands the pain that I go through every single day just to breathe. Every breath is painful when you're living in emotional pain that you can't even control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's really important for people to understand that mental resiliency and emotional balance, these are lifelong practices. We have to work on it all the time, every day. You're not going to feel well like all the time. I actually tell parents that they need to start teaching their children this. We need to stop saying, oh, I'm so sorry you didn't make the team, eat some ice cream. No, say, you know, sometimes you don't make the team and things happen and you're going to feel bad, but I'm going to help you in this process and through this process. And, you know, feel what it feels like to feel bad in this moment. Let's acknowledge it. Let's talk about it and where you are, rather than continually, you know, anesthetizing ourselves every time something happens. Because when we do that, then we don't have the skills that are required to help us through. And then if you watch television, there's a pill for everything. We're not supposed to feel anything. You know, it just, so we set ourselves up for this. The society kind of sets us up for this. But when I worked as a mental health coach, they talked a lot about exactly what you said. talking to people, because I talked people down from suicide ideation all the time. And it was, rather than running away from the person who says they want to kill themselves, I ran to them. Well, tell me exactly what do you want to do? We would get very specific, like exactly how are you planning to do this? You know, when are you planning to do this? Have you made your final arrangements? We talked through the whole thing, you know, and people are very much afraid of that, but they don't recognize that you're actually helping the person to process, you know, maybe I actually want to be here. You know, maybe there's something else that is behind these situations. So thank you so much for sharing that. Is there anything else you want to share with us about the Suicide Institute or the New York Suicide Council and your work there?
Well, the work that we are doing right now is really changing the paradigm of how we address suicide. We're addressing suicide from reaching people where they're at. We're training people across the board. No matter who you are, you can be a part of the process of helping someone who is having a bad day, feeling suicidal, or even lost a loved one to suicide. Part of what we're trying to do and doing is just changing the paradigm, right? You don't have to be, it's like you're drowning. If you're drowning and someone comes to save you, you don't ask the person, are you a lifeguard? Are you certified to save me? The person is there to save you in a time of need. Are you going to accept the help or not? And if you accept the help, then the person will be able to get you to that next stage of you getting more help that's needed. And so that's how we're approaching this suicide piece, by empowering people with the tools and the knowledge. Because I work with a lot of mental health professionals who tell me they're uncomfortable working with someone who is suicidal. I work with a lot of people who are in the field who, if the person says, yes, I want to kill myself, they don't know what the next words to come out of their mouths would be. So they get stuck in that moment of like, oh my God, what do I say? I don't want to be the one to say something bad or something wrong to that person to hurt themselves. So those are the conversations and the trainings that we provide. How to really work with someone who has a plan. The person is clearly comfortable with dying and is willing to tell you how they're going to die. How do you have that conversation? What do you do? How do you engage on a humane level with that person to then be able to connect that person to the services and the resources that they need? And that's basically where I am in the work that I'm doing at CISFI, at the Suicide Institute and the Suicide Council, is bringing the awareness, but also the training and really getting people to realize that this is a crisis. This is a public health crisis. And don't tell me that because you don't see it on the news that people aren't killing themselves. I still hear a lot of people tell me Black people don't kill themselves, and I have to show them the data, and I have to show them the articles, and I show them the cases, and they're like, "Oh my God, we didn't know how bad this was."
The bottom line is, will stress and unexpected trauma ever stop coming our way?
No.
It won't, right?
No.
So if that, given the truth of that, what will then be, as Richard would say, what would then be our response to that? And that's where our training is. That's where we need to help people to have the strategies that they can put into place. When you're in a dark place, what do you do? And when you're with a person who's in a dark place, how do you support? And I think, you know, even giving people the courage to be okay with sitting with a person. Right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What if you don't do anything? What if you are sitting with that person? It seems maybe uncomfortable, but it is of great help, great assistance to people. And I know this for sure, working as a mental health coach for quite some time, that oftentimes people literally just need to let go of the stuff that is choking them, right? And I think that that's a really important thing. So if people want to know more about the New York Suicide Council and Suicide Institute, how would they obtain information?
They could go to our website, sisfi.org, or just search online for the words and the sites will come up. But sisfi.org is the main organization. The Suicide Institute is a division of CISFI, and CISFI finances the New York Suicide Council. We run the Suicide Council and manage the Suicide Council. So sisfi.org is where you'll find all the information about us and the work that we're doing and the different organizations that we're partnering with and how we're changing the paradigm about suicide awareness, prevention, intervention, and postvention.
Well, Brett, I want to thank you for not only talking about the work that you're doing, but sharing your own personal testimony as well, because I think that that inspires people to want to learn more about what you do, because they know you come from not only a place of ingenuity, but experience, and having dealt with this directly. And I also appreciate you challenging us to really expand our dialogue. When you mentioned the fact that not everyone who's dealing with these issues is mentally ill. Exactly. And a lot of time we couch it in terms of mental and emotional illness. Right. And I know I, at the top of introducing you, also use that as well. And so thank you for sort of shedding light on the fact that it's kind of counterproductive to the type of conversation that we're trying to have. So I just wanted to thank you again for that.
Yeah. Thank you.
And so, Dr. Hubbard, take it on. You know, you wrote a very important blog post that's currently on our site, and you're going to walk us through this now, but you can go on www.blackmaleachievement.org and yourself. Sorry, there's I'll just go ahead.
We're having a little bit of Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. We had some feedback there. It might be, is that Dr. Lazaar that's on? Can you hear us? Okay. Well, you know what? I'll go ahead, and then we can, then we'll move on to Dr. Lazaar as we figure out the, you know, the sound issues. So what I wanted to do was just have a conversation about strategies, because first I want to make clear the distinction. I have two hats that I wear. The first hat is Director of CBMA Health and Healing Strategies, where I work with a campaign for Black male achievement. The other hat is as a doctor of natural medicine. So I'm functioning in that role right now. And just to be clear, doctors of natural medicine, we do not diagnose, we do not treat, we do not cure. We do not dispense medication. I don't deal in medication at all whatsoever. What I do is I help people figure out what to do with themselves and how to get healthy in between doctor's visits, right? So how can you use food, water, self-awareness, herbs, you know, movement, therapeutic movement to help you get from where you are to where you want to be. So I just wanted to make that clear, because the article that I wrote, the blog that I wrote, are really about strategies to help people transcend depression and suicidal thoughts. And the reason why I do this is because even in the field of Black male achievement, and with different challenges that we have with health and healing, we tend to talk about the problem continually, but never solutions. Right? What do we do given that we have this problem? And so I wrote the blog because I want you to know, if something is happening, stress, trauma, never going to stop. It's always coming at us. We need to have a counter strategy, continual, you know? And if we don't have this counter strategy, then it's much easier for us to succumb to all manners of, you know, think about it. If you're feeling bad, your heart is broken, you watch a sad movie, you watch the news, you know, you're continually, you know, assaulted with the way people treat you on the street. Oh, you could just be a regular person, right? Doing whatever, and life can catch up with you. So if you don't have a plan, a series of, like I like to call it, a toolkit, a series of strategies to help you get from where you are to where you want to be, then it's very difficult for us to move forward. So I'm going to share some of these strategies. And I also noticed that Dr. Lazaar is on as well. And I will call on her as well. But first I want to kind of walk through a few strategies. And the first one, there are 5 that I put in the blog article, so you can read about it in detail in the article. But the first is to develop what I call a mental wellness self-care toolkit. And it's based on your personality and your particular, oh, wow, Whitney, you're the bomb. Whitney, now put it up there. So to help you, and you know, I use an example in the article that I put a little calendar notification to tell me to breathe at a certain time. And when I first did that, I was so irritated when that calendar invite came up. I'm like, what is this thing? And I was like, oh, right. This is a part of my toolkit. So it was very funny that I knew how to beat myself at my own game. So I had to laugh at myself and go, oh my goodness, this is a strategy to help me because this is how I behave at this time of day. So your mental wellness self-care toolkit is based on your unique personality. If you know that you go a certain place at a certain time and that you need snacks, water, whatever the case may be, you need to call a friend, make that a part of your self-care toolkit. And it's really important that it is based on your own personality. So think about that. I listed a few examples of different strategies that you can use, but use that just as an example. And then you can kind of go from there. And then the second strategy that I think is really important is to have a non-negotiable daily practice, right? And what I mean by non-negotiable daily practice is you do not go to bed until you've done this practice. At some point in the day, you are giving yourself whatever amount of time. Maybe it's 30 seconds, maybe it's 30 minutes, maybe it's 5 minutes, whatever it is, whatever this daily practice is, it is a way for you to check in with yourself. It could be, like I say to a lot of people, when you wake up in the morning, before you check in with your spouse, your partner, before you watch the news, check your phone, just check in with yourself. Take a couple of deep breaths and check in with who you are and where you are in this moment, right? That could be a very simple self-care practice. What I put in the blog is a morning practice that involves a combination of breath and movement. So you can check that out as well. But the key is something that is non-negotiable. I'm going to do this for myself every day. So that would be number 2. And number 3 would be, you know, I love to have little mantras. And so this mantra is, when in pain, reframe. When in pain, reframe. And the reason why I say that is because when we are in pain, we are not normally speaking the truth. So if I say, I am sad, that is not true. You are who you are. You are whatever your name is. I'm Phyllis. I'm not sad. Sad is not my identity. But if I were to say, I feel sad, that is true, right? So it's important for us to frame, what is it? I can't stand the pain. Well, that's not true because you're here. I can barely stand the pain. That's more true, right? So if you were to connect into the truth of what's really happening in the moment and breathe into that feeling, you'll notice that the pain surges, but your breath will also allow it to dissipate. So it's a really important strategy that we will practice if we have some time at the end of this Google Hangout. So when in pain, reframe. What is the truth? Are your eyes windows or projectors? Are you seeing what's really there? Or are you projecting onto the situation something from your past? That's really important to know. Also, I'd like to say that, you know, acknowledging that the past is dead, so therefore you can do nothing about it. And the future is unknown, so therefore you can do nothing about that either. Kind of gets you in a space of, where am I in this present moment, right? And it takes effort to get there and to stay there. So when in pain, reframe. That would be number 3. Number 4 is a pain release exercise that I'll talk about, but at the end of our Google Hangout, we'll actually practice it. And it is a pain release exercise that's based on something that I learned as a body worker that I used to do when people would have intense pain points in their body. Sometimes we would call them trigger points. So let's say this area right here that I'm touching is a trigger point. I would take a breath into that area and hold my breath for a few moments and exhale, and then I would try to deepen the breath as I pressed into the pain. Not so much that I hurt myself, but just to the point of a contact of pain. And what happens is, when you send oxygenated blood into that area, it causes the pain to shift. And that is true for physical pain as well as emotional pain. So when I'm talking to people, I will say, I know that you're in extreme anguish right now. Where do you feel that in your body? Do you feel it somewhere? And a lot of times people will say, well, I feel it right here. I'm like, okay, put your hand there. Put your hand where you think you feel this pain. Where is it emanating in your body? And then let's breathe into that and see if we can help move and shift that pain. So these are like real techniques that people can use to help move pain out of their body. And it connects. When you do something physically, it also connects with emotional pain. So we'll practice that a little bit later. And then the last strategy is to avoid knee-jerk reactions at all costs. And this is very difficult to do, but it is something that we have to practice. And so what I would say is to remember to breathe before you speak or you act. So someone says something to you and it's like a sucker punch, right? We've all had this experience. You feel completely deflated. And the response or the temptation is to immediately respond. But what if you were to breathe and then pause and then speak? Your brain requires about 20% of your body's oxygen, but it's only 2% of your body's mass, right? So you're giving yourself a moment then to allow yourself to connect in with yourself and with the truest part of yourself so that you can have a response that's a little bit more empowered. So breathe, pause, and then speak. Breathe, pause, and then act. Breathe, pause, and then choose your thoughts. If you can do that, you can ask yourself, wait a minute, is this true? Am I saying that I am angry? Am I saying that I feel anger? Or am I saying that anger is arising in me? What's happening, right? Breathe and give yourself a moment to connect with what is really true, right? Oftentimes we go down what I call the downward spiral because we haven't taken a moment to actually connect in with what's going on right now. Let's just look at it. So avoiding those knee-jerk reactions really helps a lot. So if the pain began inside you, then freedom from the pain also exists inside you. So I firmly believe that the answers are inside. Go inside and be courageous enough to go there, regardless of how bad you may feel. Connect in with it and process it and move from there. So I wanted to offer those as strategies. I have the full article on the website and invite you all to check it out. But I really would love to bring Dr. Lazaar into the conversation. So let's see, can you hear us, Dr. Lazaar? I don't know, Janet, can you give us a little introduction of her and let's see if we're all set?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I apologize for interference.
I'm going to mute my line.
Okay. All right. I think that we are there. Dr. Lazaar, are you with us? Dr. Lazaar, well, let me just introduce Dr. Monique Lazaar. She is the incoming executive director of Rafiki Coalition on Health and Wellness, which is based in the Bay Area. Rafiki's mission is to stop the spread of HIV/AIDS and eliminate health disparities in San Francisco's Black and marginalized community. And so in addition to that, though, really tackling this issue of mental and emotional wellness. And so I definitely want to give Dr. Lazaar the opportunity, if there are no technical difficulties, to weigh in on what Dr. Hubbard and then also just give some insight into the work that you're doing and the lives that you're touching and how you approach these particular issues. And Dr. Lazaar, I see that your mic may be muted. So if you hover your mouse over at the top of the screen, You should be able to unmute it. Let me know if that works. Okay, well, my apologies. It seems that there may be some technical difficulties, which is par for the course, you know, when you're doing a live stream. And so in the meantime, while we try to sort that out, Dr. Hubbard, do you want to go ahead and do breathing exercises? Because I think that's definitely important.
I would. And I also wanted to say that Dr. Lazaar and the Rafiki Coalition will be a part of our second podcast, which will be launching in another month or so. So we are super, super excited. You're going to hear some great stories about their 10th annual health and Black health and wellness.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yay! We got it.
Thank
we
you.
sending up positive energy. I was sending you some chi, you know, I'm qigong practitioner. I'm like, I got it. Get the chi going. All right.
I got the love. Thank you. So it sounds like there's a little reverberation.
I'm going to mute my line. If the other
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So Dr. Phil, thank you so much. I'm so sorry I didn't get to hear everyone else. There was a Board of Supervisors meeting that got called at the last minute in San Francisco that I had to be at. So I'm loving what Dr. Phil is sharing, and I am at Rafiki Coalition. Our main focus is to reduce health disparities and increase wellness in the African American community here in San Francisco. And we have a lot of different ways that we do that. One of the things that we do is we have a health and wellness clinic where folks can come and get free acupuncture and massage Monday through Friday. Come in and have movement and various types of physical activity and meditation. They can do cardio soul, line dancing, Zumba, and lots of different types of yoga. We also do health education around reducing health disparities. And we have a transitional HIV positive house. We also have do work around trauma. And so in that way, we're constantly looking to integrate the full person, understanding that there's social determinants of health that really impact us. So when I got the message from Dr. Phil about this, and we were talking about our, as she was mentioning, our 10th annual Black Health and Healing Summit, one of the things that I also did was put together a, Dr. Phil, a quick list. I thought I was supposed to do the list. So I've got a toolkit also, and I thought I would share it. Because one of the things that interestingly is that we're both very much in agreement. So one of the things around our health disparities that we do know is that our emotions, the depression or anxiety or trauma that we carry in our body, if left unhealed, then can impact our health. So that if we're facing a chronic disease, sometimes the very root of it, as Dr. Phil was sharing, is an emotional root that also where we also were not able to heal from that. So I did come up with a few little quick things, and I know we don't have a ton of time, so I'm going to keep them really brief. I have a list of 5 things also. One of the things that interestingly we really struggle from is community. So where with desegregation, folks moved off into their own houses, into their separate places. We're getting pushed out into different various communities, maybe not the community that we grew up in so that we can afford housing. And so we're living very far from the people in our village. So the whole piece that we work at Rafiki with is to build the village. We have to reduce the isolation because that isolation is killing us. So if we're a baby that's not touched, we can literally die from not being touched, from failure to thrive. So we need, not only do we need to reduce the isolation with the phone calls, the conversations, but we need hugs. So one of the things that I've seen is that we're afraid to touch our young people, especially our males. So we need to make sure that that boy that hits 7, 8, where you're not giving him a hug anymore because, oh yeah, young man, come here, let me give you a handshake. That young man needs love and a hug. So we really have to talk about safe touch in our community. For a healthy immune system, we need at least 10 hugs a day. So I would bump that up for a healthy emotional sense of well-being. And when I'm talking about touch, I'm talking about safe touch. I'm talking about healthy touch. But we need that safe, healthy touch 10 to 12 to 15, 20 times a day because there's so much going on with structural racism and messages in our society that we're getting that we're not okay the way we are, that we really, really, really want to make sure that we're feeling love, that we're feeling connected, that we're feeling touched, that we're feeling safe. So the next piece is this, especially around suicidality, or when we're feeling like, oh my God, I can't go another day. Edge is right over there, and maybe I should just walk off it, or I should walk into that traffic, or I should take that pill. So the piece around that is to buy time. Really, really, really get till tomorrow. So buy your time, no matter what. When you're feeling low, feeling down, get a friend over, do something to take care of yourself, go to a movie, start binge watching a series. Buy time, especially for our young people. Our brains haven't even finished developing, and so when their brain isn't finished developing, that reactivity, that short decision fuse can really, the suicidality and the attempts can be taken care of if we just get to the next day. The other piece around that we have to recognize with our young men and with our girls is that we are suiciding by cop, and so, or suiciding by each other. So we really need to think about that anger management and that high reactivity, and that those set trips and those ways that we go off on each other. We'll really have to work with our youth around the level of reactivity and really buy the time to help get a cool head, take a breath, calm down. So that's a huge, huge, huge piece. With that also comes, we have to shift the neurochemistry. So with our neurochemistry, there's 4 things or 3 things really. It's that meditation that Dr. Phil is talking about. It's that, well, taking that walk, but I'm going to say get cardio. You need 30 minutes a day to change your brain chemistry. So get out, take a walk, take a hike, dance, put on some good old club music and twerk in your room. That 30 minutes can save your life and impact your level of depression. Um, the next piece is, some of you might laugh, but having safe sex with appropriate partners. That sex raises the impact of oxytocin in your brain, especially females, and it changes our capacity to process, and it's one of the feel good hormones. So we really, all of the things that I just mentioned, they increase our good feelings in our brain and help us shift. The other piece is quality sleep. So you got to turn off the TV, turn off all the gadgets, put the phone in the other room, and get a really good night's sleep. That, I can't tell you enough how that shifts our brain chemistry, and how that impacts depression and anxiety and trauma. The other piece that Dr. Phil already spoke about is nutrition. So our food really impacts our mood, and it also, and our behaviors around the food impact our self-esteem. So making sure that when you're reaching for something, that you're reaching for something that feels good, healthy, whole foods. I'm that was raised on processed foods. It's giving us lots of illness and lots of anxiety, lots of sedentary behavior, lots of impact on our lives. Now, with our youth today, they're growing up on a whole lifespan of often non-healthy whole foods and genetically modified foods. So we really want to make sure that our foods actually have the nutritional value that we need. So if our foods don't have the nutritional value, then we need to make sure that we're getting our vitamins, because that impacts our brain chemistry. And the very last thing, which Dr. Phil also spoke about, which is we need to consciously change our self-talk. And there's a story, it was told to me as a Cherokee story. It could also be an African proverb, who knows? But as this Cherokee story, that there's two wolves, and you look at these two wolves, and one wolf is the wolf of love, the wolf of joy, the wolf of happiness, the wolf of abundance. The other wolf is one that has negativity, fear, hatred, envy, anxiety, trauma. And that when we think consciously about those wolves, that we think about it as, which wolf will we feed today? Which neural pathway, which pathway in our brain do we want to feed? Do we want to feed the jealousy or the hatred or the anger or the rage? Or do we want to feed the love and joy? But I think the other piece that Dr. Phil spoke about, which is really, really crucial, is that we also have to have a process to feel our feelings. So the piece that she mentioned around holding your hand on a place that you're in pain and really understanding what that emotion is a way to clear it and clean it. But if we just move over it, then that's not going to help us either. So I'm going to pause for a minute, Dr. Phil, and have you, and I'm going to try to put myself on mute and see where we're at.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me? I love the strategies that you shared because, you know, one of the things that I said in the article is that a lot of people, when we look at suicide and depression, people will say, if the person committed suicide, they'd say, oh my goodness, we should have gotten him better medication. And, you know, we need to work on access. And I say continually, you know, Robin Williams had the access to the best doctors. And he also had access to the best medication. And he still took his life, right? So I think it's important for us to understand that we need to have a strategy for when there is no medication, when there is no one around. We need to have a strategy. We need to know what to do. And you always have your body and you always have your breath. And so I think it's important for us to recognize what it is that we have and to tap into that. So I know that Richard had to drop off, but we will make sure that everyone knows how to get in touch with him and his work and so forth. But I wanted to check in time-wise to see if we have the time to do this breathing exercise. Or Janet, where are we?
Can I
Oh, please, Brett, yes.
I really just wanted to say, you know, we've talked a lot of great things. There's a lot of feedback coming. So we've talked a lot of great things tonight, but I want to bring this very important point into the conversation, that there are some people who have made peace with their pain, and no matter what we do, or no matter how we're trying to make this look like it's a recoverable thing, there are some people who have been going through this pain for so long that they are shut down and they've closed their minds to any kind of hope. They're just now existing in their pain, and they have come to peace. I've learned over time, and for me as a person who has, as I've shared before, I'm a suicide attempt survivor. I'm someone who's comfortable with taking my own life. I'm comfortable with the process. You know, I'm at that point. I always say, a lot of times I go to events that talk about suicide. I hear people talk about suicide, and they overlook the real experience of what that pain is because they're trying to talk about hope. I want us to talk about the reality of the lived experience, that there are some people who don't know how to do some of the things that we're talking about. And we don't want them to feel like you're hopeless because you don't know how to do it, or there's no hope for you because you don't understand what we're saying. What we want people to understand is that we hear you on different levels, but what we're presenting here are opportunities to overcome the pain that you're going through, to find the hope to recovery. But if you can't and you don't know how to, there are people and there are resources and places that can help you to learn and to get that. One of the big things that I see us dying from, and a lot of suicides from, is the lack of intimacy. A lot of people have love but no intimacy. A lot of people want to be loved and are in relationships. And I say all the time when I do workshops and presentations, we have more single people in marriages and relationships today than any other time. because you're with someone, but you're not emotionally connected with that person. And so you're not being fed the love that now transitions and transcends the feeding of the heart and the mind, the body, the soul, and the spirit. And I can speak to that on a personal level. I dwell off intimacy. If I don't have intimacy, I can't eat. I have no appetite. I have no will. I have no drive, nothing. You understand what I'm saying, Dr. Phyllis? I know you can understand what I'm saying. Like, as a black man, intimacy for me is the foundation of everything. You don't even have to feed me as a woman. Just give me my love and my intimacy. But I'm saying that because I want us to be real with this conversation, because I hear it every day from black males out here, young and old. You know, Brett, listen, man, I wish I had a woman who really could just care for me. I just want her to tell me she loves me. I want to feel like I'm special. I want to feel like she misses me. These basic things are what they're dwelling on, and they're killing themselves because they're not getting it. And when you look at that, just that need for that simplicity, innate, intrinsic value of love, nothing else matters. They have jobs, they make money, they drive nice cars, they have houses, you know, but they're not getting that basic innate nurturing that they need. And that's how many of them are killing themselves: drinking, smoking, exposing themselves to all kinds of risky sexual behavior, because they're trying to fulfill an emotional need that they're not getting, and they're dying and they're killing themselves. So, you know, I wish we had more time that we could get into some of these things that are some of the triggers and the ways that people are self-harming. Because one of the biggest problems that we face is, as soon as you say suicide, everybody thinks it's death. But it's a process. There are a lot of things that are involved in this process. Death ends the suicide, but it's not the suicide. And so for us, we need to talk about the process. How do you go from a life, living a life, a happy life, to now some disruption comes in your life, and now you start feeling that pain, that depressed state, that hopeless state, that lifelessness. And then if you don't take care of that, how that can lead to addiction, depression, and other things that could end up, you know, you losing in life. But there are some basic things that I think and I see and I feel, and I can speak to that personally, that we cannot overlook saying those things, because then you have people who are listening and watching this, or will listen to us in wherever we are, and they're like, but listen, man, all I need is to be loved. And to me, that's more valuable than having a house, a car, or even a job. Because if I don't have that, I have no self-worth. I don't feel like I'm of a value. And so I just wanted to interject that in, because I think it is a very serious piece when we look at the fact that some people choose not to go on with life because of what they desire and can have as a basic need.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think that the biggest part of health and healing is the realness. Like I said, be in the present moment, check in with the truest part of yourself, and tell yourself the truth about where you are. We can't heal unless we do that. You can't heal something you're not willing to look at. So hopefully people who have tuned in have some level of connection to that, and feel like they have the permission to just be their real selves, right? Because that's where the healing begins.
Well, and also, just to piggyback off of what you were saying, Brett, I think, you know, part of the work that we're doing here at CBMA is about narrative change, and what you just described is a huge part of that. We really need to change the narrative that is championed out there, which is, you know, that men, and black men in particular, are hyper, you know, masculine and hard, and that they don't thrive off of love. I mean, those are some of the conscious and subconscious messages that we get, and that's the farthest thing from the truth. And so we really have to shift that narrative. And again, we are hosting this hangout during Suicide Prevention Week, but it's also National Suicide Prevention Month. And so we need to certainly continue to have this conversation, not just in this month, but hereafter, to really make sure that that narrative and that perception expands beyond what it currently is. And so, Phyllis, I definitely think that it's important, given that you went over the the 5 strategies, that we at least dedicate a couple of minutes to doing this breathing exercise. And so I'll turn it over to you before we officially end the call.
Okay, sounds great. Yeah, I think it's really important that we don't just talk about the strategies, but we practice at least one. And so this is a very simple strategy. I have it listed on the website, and I have other breathing exercises that you can tap into as well. But the first thing that you want to do is make sure that you're sitting up straight, right? Rocking your hips from side to side and making sure that you're on your sit bones and not slouching back on your tailbone. And then very, very gently pull your shoulders up and back and down and just relax them there, right? And this will help to increase the blood flow. And the first thing that you want to do then is either pick a spot that is just in front of you, let your eyes go soft, or close your eyes, however it feels good to you. And then we're going to practice breathing slowly and deeply in and out. And we're going to just take a few breaths to really connect with that process that's actually going on in our bodies all the time. So as you breathe in, without forcing, just notice what's happening in the moment. As you breathe in, you notice that the belly expands out, sort of like a balloon. And as you exhale, the navel sinks inward towards your spine. And as you breathe slowly and deeply, you're not forcing this to happen. You're just noticing what's happening in real time. Breathe in, expanding outward. Exhale, the navel sinks inward. Let's take another breath. In, out. And then continue this breathing practice. Keep breathing slowly and deeply. And then either by placing your hands together like so, or placing your hand on your heart, or maybe some place where you feel pain, just take a moment to place your hands in a position where you feel pain. I'm doing my hands here because this is an easy way for you to track your heartbeat. So we're going to do that first. As you breathe slowly and deeply in and out, just notice if you can locate where your heartbeat is. It may not be that you feel it in your heart. It may not be that you feel it in your fingertips. You might feel it in your ear. You might feel it somewhere else in the body. You might not feel it at all. And if you don't feel it at all, that's okay. I want you to just pay attention to what's happening in the moment. And as you breathe slowly and deeply, notice if you can track where your heartbeat is. Breathing slowly and deeply in and out. No judgment if you can't feel it. Just notice what's happening in the moment. Breathe slowly and deeply in and out. You can stay in the position that you're in, or if you find another place that feels discomfort, feel free to place your hand there as well. Check in with your body. See what you're feeling. Do you feel pain somewhere in the body? If so, place your hand there, and with firm pressure, take a breath into that spot. And as you exhale, try to push in just a little bit harder. No forcing, just making contact with the pain. We'll do this 2 more times. Breathe in. As you exhale, press in just a little bit. 3rd time, breathe in. Exhale, press in. Now on this next breath in, we're going to breathe in, and we're going to hold the breath just for a few seconds. Notice the point of pain. Hold it. and then exhale out. We'll try this again. Breathe in. Hold it, pressing into the pain, and see if you can hold your breath until you feel a slight shift. Exhale. We'll try it one more time. Breathe in. Hold. Notice if there's any shift in the pain. Not that it's going away, but just a shift. Try to hold a little longer if you can. And then exhale. Good. Then take a breath in. And as you exhale, lower the hands down. Take one more breath in. If your eyes are closed, as you exhale, you can open your eyes. I'd like to send people to this exercise when they're feeling pain, because all that we feel is held somewhere in our bodies. And a lot of times we don't feel it immediately. But with practice and time, you'll begin to notice that you can track pain everywhere in the body. And it's very powerful to cause a shift and help the pain find an exit from the body. So, so I will leave the exercise there, but just thank you all for being willing to try an exercise. The exercise is listed again on the website, and there are other breathing exercises and breathing and movement exercises that are also hyperlinked within the article. So thank you.
Thank you for this. And so with that, we conclude our special discussion. But again, we certainly encourage that this be a conversation that happens not just throughout the rest of this week, not throughout the rest of this month, but make it a continual part of your daily conversation, especially as you interact with friends and loved ones who you suspect or know may be dealing with these challenges. And so I want to thank you again, Brett, for taking the time and really coming to us with raw honesty, because I think that we're not going to get to the root of this issue if we're not honest. Even when it makes other people uncomfortable, we have to speak our truth, and that will empower others to speak their truth as well. We also want to thank Richard Taylor for his inspiring story, Dr. Monique Lazaar for joining us from the Bay Area. Obviously, Dr. Phil, you are such a value, and you're bringing such light to this, not just for the field, but for the broader movement of Black male achievement. And so thank you again. You will be able to, if you have people that wanted to join this conversation but couldn't make it, it will actually be archived on our website as soon as we sign off. So you can visit www.blackmaleachievement.org. It'll be housed on our homepage, or you can bookmark the link that brought you to this Hangout that you're watching now. And we certainly encourage you to share it with your friends and your family, in addition to reviewing the blog post that Dr. Phil wrote on how to transcend depression and suicidal thoughts. Your mic.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep.
And the sneak peek of the Journey to Radiance.
Yes.
So
yes.
I'll put the link out for that as well.
Yes, I mean, Journey to Radiance, it's going to deal with a number of issues related to health and wellness, and just some really great stuff. And so we have it up on our website now, so you can go check it out. It follows a very inspiring story of a young man from the Bay Area who actually himself was struggling with issues of suicidal thoughts and depression. He had lost many friends in a very short span of time. And so it's very inspiring, and then also just very anchoring. to hear in his own words how he's still, to Brett's point, living with this and taking it one day at a time. So please do check that out, and we will be officially launching it tomorrow. So we hope you tune in. Thank you, everybody. Have a great and wonderful evening and rest of the week.
Thank you, everyone.